Hello, and thank you so much for joining me this evening on my podcast. I know you could be doing so much with your time, so I don't take it for granted. Today, we're discussing a topic that is very, very current. We've all heard about AI, AR, digital migration, convergence of technology, all these big words that are being thrown about, and things are changing in the communication sector every day and very, very quickly. And to discuss this topic, there's no better person than a face that is quite familiar to many of you, and that is one, the president of the Media Houses Association of Zambia, and also the vision carrier for Diamond TV, Mr. Costa Mwansa. Welcome.
Thank you for having me on your podcast, Doc.
It is a pleasure to have you. Now, our topic today, I remember when I was growing up, there was one TV channel. TV started over the weekend at 16 hours and 17 on during the week. We had one or two cartoons, Roger Ramjet, I don't know if you remember that. And we all gathered around this one channel, this one box set to watch TV. And then recently, in the last 10, 15 years, there's been so much disruption. We started hearing about digital migration. What is that? What has happened to broadcasting?
I think it's a great point to start from because TV traditionally was used as a medium of communication, but from a social perspective was also used as a bonding space for family time, just like you rightly put it, considered a luxury, now more a necessity. But with linear programming, which is the fact that the viewer or the consumer of TV content had to wait for whatever was being programmed for them to watch. And obviously sometimes you could watch it only from, say, 17 to midnight until the next day. So much has changed over the years. In 2015, the world switched from analog to digital, simply meaning that the aspect of having one channel per TV set, and I remember the good old days where you had these big box sets at TV Menyambama or something like that.
With aerials.
It was all about capacity. And for those who were in broadcasting at that time, it was issues of more frequency, and if you needed to expand, you needed to put more transmitters. So what digital migration simply means is that you can have more channels in one frequency, whereas before you had one frequency to one channel. So it's more options, it's more choices for the viewers, but it brings out a lot of complexities and dynamics, both in terms of how content is distributed and how content is consumed. And from what you explained, we see that after analog to digital and now to convergence that you've spoken about and all these things that are happening, the family bonding time or the aspect of having to wait for content is fast changing because it's all about habits and patterns in terms of how the consumer dictates how they want to consume the content.
Isn't that a good thing that we moved from linear, where we all had to follow a schedule, and now as consumers we can watch various channels and more content? Is that a good thing?
It is a good thing, but with its challenges, because obviously the proponents of moving into digital were saying it's going to have more options, effective ways of content distribution, but also from the cost of broadcast. We expected that it will be cheaper. So the debate now is whether you're doing terrestrial broadcast, and I simply mean being able to have a decoder or a set-top box in the home and the small antenna as opposed to the dish, which is satellite. For the broadcasters, obviously, it is still more expensive to broadcast using satellite, but there's still more costs, even on the terrestrial sides, because you need a few transmitter sites. With load shedding now, there's cost of diesel and so on. But as digital blew up and became more prominent, apart from the distribution costs of satellite or terrestrial components, it's now the cost of data. And for continents like Africa and in particular countries like Zambia, you will agree that the cost of, first of all, just the internet penetration and the internet quality is not as good, which obviously looks at aspects of cost. and living in a global environment. The shifts again within this space is quite fast. You're now talking about 5G technology, 6K technology in terms of formats on how you're shooting, and Africa is always on the back foot of this. So it is a good thing, but quite costly, if you tell me, for Africa.
So it's good for the consumer. Would you say that this technology has responded to the way the real world of work has changed? You have 24 hours food places, you have people working in various shifts, so they're not able to watch television in a linear manner. But you do accept that, you did point out that it has disrupted families. But isn't this the reality of today's world, that TV is catching up? Or should we even call it TV anymore?
Media. I'd like to look at it from really a historical development of how or where the world is coming from. We started from what we study as the Stone Age into the Iron Age, the Industrial Revolution age, the computer age. Now we're talking about an AI space, a metaverse space. From a labor perspective, all these times have always brought about the question of, will jobs be safe? And in certain industries, we've seen that certain functionalities where human beings had to play a role have definitely gone out. I'd always give it's all about efficiency. I think as technology evolves, it's all about efficiency. In your time, I think you started with was it U-matic type of editing, and you remember that once you could only edit one line and then the next line, and once you made a mistake, you had to go back all over again. So from the size of the reels to the VHS tape, just to cards. Now that's efficiency and how simpler things have become.
How has that technology then demanded from media personnel new skills in terms of content production?
Adaptability in all spheres. There are arguments about how this new technology can be applied across, whether it's newsrooms, it's in production, it's even in content distribution in itself, because you look at aspects of direct target marketing, because you want to understand your viewer very well in terms of their consumption habits, what they want to watch. Netflix, for example, is one clear-cut example I can use where artificial intelligence or such type of technology is being used, because if you click on today to watch a specific program, the algorithm behind Netflix will be able to recommend a specific show based on your preference. When you are subscribing to certain platforms or channels, they ask you to fill in certain things. And sometimes, because we want to skip the hassle of wanting to get to an app that you want to be, it will ask you things that, will you allow this application to have access to your contacts, to have access to your pictures? The algorithm is so intelligent, it's simply looking at the patterns of what Dora likes, what Costa does, and so they'll be able to recommend like that. So target programming or data analytics. Then you look at newsroom, for example, things like fact checking. I think in the area of so much content out there, how do we tell the difference between what's true and what's not true? So technology that is able to quickly do that, because in a human format, imagine how many documents or hours I need to go through. So some say it's advantageous on the aspect of efficiency, but there are also others who argue that it takes out the human element, especially when it comes from the aspect of journalism, because robotics or technology will not have an empathetic element if I'm reporting a child story or gruesome murder.
They'll follow trends.
It will just pick out and be able to put it out in that manner. So there's pros and cons to this in terms of what dynamics it brings to media.
We talked just now about, really, should we continue to call it TV or broadcasting? Has the migration to digital medium increased cost for you? For example, at Diamond TV, because I see it's not just the TV box that people are watching now, you have to make sure that it's on Facebook, it's on Instagram. Is this really traditional broadcasting anymore?
I think the biggest debate world over right now, and it's a thing that keeps me awake at night, is how many more years will traditional or conservative media exist in its current format. And I always argue that the best thing is, like we've done in the past, to basically adapt. Previously, people would film traffic news or traffic watch using a helicopter.
Yes.
This can easily be done through a drone that removes a camera person. You've got robotic cameras in studios, removes a camera person.
AI for editing.
And so, like you said, what happens to those that are just simply camera people? They need to enhance on their skills. But on the cost element that you talk about and whether TV should still be called TV, no, I think what we're calling ourselves is basically media now, because like you're saying, content waits for nobody because the consumer is what has become sophisticated. They're demanding content in their convenience. So at my own time, in my own convenience, on my phone, whether I'm on a bus, I'm in a train, even airplanes, you might be 30,000 feet up,
You can still
but you're
make a
connected to
call.
the internet, you can watch a live game. So it's more about adapting and really customizing to the needs of the consumer. And it's like you rightfully put it in your introduction, that we're moving from the big screen more to the small screen of convenience and TV on the go, TV in the pocket. So the cost, in certain aspects, those in digital and social media will say maybe it's cheaper. But I still feel that there is relevance of traditional media on the aspect of ethics, on the aspect of basics, because I believe that social media is not a new form of journalism. It's a new form of content distribution, and journalism in its fundamental format has to be done in its ethical format. So costs are reducing in one way.
Okay, but before we even get to the news media houses versus citizen journalism or social media, your cost must increase as even a traditional media, because you've had to respond to viewers, to give them the news on Facebook, to give them lifestyle on Instagram, which would have been thought of only as for influencers, but even a news house now has to adapt.
Well, from the fact that like in our case, when we started 7 years ago, we were basically traditional style, having a newsroom. We've now had to expand, rightfully put it like you're saying, to have a social media team, diversifying now into how we integrate the social media into the newsroom, the social media into our creatives, but also social media into digital marketing and monetization. So from the cost of running that operation, yes, you're very right. Though the cost of producing for social media may become a bit cheaper because you've got a lot of content creators who, especially the young people across the world and in this country, are brilliant creatives, and the amount of content they're able to create off the phone, to edit, whether it's through CapCut or using TikTok and all these other platforms. But when you talk about the increase in cost, you're very right also on the other side, because media houses such as this one may want to rethink. For example, you've got 3 million households with a TV set in Zambia, as opposed to 13 million SIM cards and over 10 million handsets in the country. And so 6.5 million people have access to internet. So maybe you may want to be going that side, and app development is the new way where it's going, and it's not cheap actually to look at app development.
Is that the same pressure for radio?
In a similar fashion, because I think radio has a better longevity, because when you look at the economies of scale, outside the line of rail, people are still using radio in rural areas, in villages, for that truth and factual news consumption.
And local news on community radios.
On community radio. But in the developed world, obviously, radio or audio has actually gone a bit further. Podcasts like this now is a combination of It's originally audio, but with some picture. Then you have issues of spaces, and then there's things to do with how music is distributed, your Boomplay, your Spotify. I think where audio has moved for me is the fact that they've been able to find the right model in terms of monetization, especially for content creators. And I'm talking about musicians and artists, because the more streams, and you can have, whether music is on Amazon or Spotify or Boomplay, at least the owner of the content gets to have the money. You've got apps as well, you're right, even in radio. And it brings a whole lot of dynamics even for regulators. You no longer can say we are limiting you or regulating you to broadcast within a certain area. With digital, I can be on what is called Radio Garden and broadcast across the whole world, but I sit in Kitwe.
How has this democratization of communication technology and channels actually challenged regulators and for businesses like yours? Because now somebody can sit in their home, record something on their phone, and broadcast it by posting it on Facebook or whatever platform. How do you regulate that?
I don't know whether one should say the world moved so fast or we were not ready for this. I was just looking up some articles online that the actual study or introduction of AI and effective artificial intelligence studies began in about 1956. It was called the Turing test. So it's been evolving all over. But just the explosion of digital, online, social media, and everything that is happening, the whole world was not ready for it. If you look at what's happening in the US Senate and the Congress, they're still grappling with what is the right legal framework to regulate this. There are discussions right now of whether TikTok should be banned in the US, or whether this
how to safeguard privacy of other people from Facebook users,
data protection,
children protection.
Privacy is one of them, but it's also
defamation.
But it's also heavily coupled with the fact that technology now and this digital boom or explosion equips the ordinary citizen. You're no longer depending on the newsroom because you have the power in your hand to really live the true meaning of what it means to have freedom of expression.
And in journalism,
as a human right.
And in journalism, we say it must come with responsibility. So how do we make sure that freedom of expression does not mean I'm going to record something and insult somebody and post it, or I'm actually going to post something that is fake? How do regulators like IBA manage that? Or even that the source of the information can be from another country and you can't stop it. You can't stop it. There are no borders for this.
That's why I'm saying it's a very, very difficult space, whether the world was ready. And you've seen the famous letter that has been written by big tech giants, Elon Musk and others, that we should slow down on the implementation of AI technology because the world may not be so ready. Others argue that maybe taxation on such products might be a deterrent in this. But nobody has really gotten the mix right. And it's become a very difficult space.
And it's an ongoing debate for legal minds, for regulators.
And policy crafters across the world.
Can I ask this? Could we have a world where truly technology and owners of these tech companies are bigger than governments? They're actually the advances, the influencers of what we know now as traditional democracy, where you go and vote for leaders to get into government. And even just individuals. Somebody can have millions of followers on Facebook can influence decisions that could impact the world. So how is this going to... Do you see in your mind a world where governments become irrelevant because of technology?
I think it's already happening. It is already happening, especially that the point where we are and where we're going is all about the mind control. And he who controls data controls the mind, and he who controls the mind controls the narrative.
Are governments moving quick enough?
I think that's why there is this debate that I'm talking about. You see Congress or the Senate and everybody wanting to find a mix of how do we craft regulation on this. But the example you gave, let's take it back to 2008, I think, when Barack Obama made history as the first black president in America. When you look at that election, one of the strategies there was that he was an underdog in that election, but social media is what propelled him to win that election. Move further, you've heard about the famous accusations around Cambridge Analytica in the UK and how they influenced the US election and Donald Trump coming in. He himself was in the White House using Twitter as an official communication tool. More recently, he just launched Trump Truth or Social, his own platform. So can social media influencers or the people who own tech and all these softwares control the world? They're already beginning to do that, because even when you look at the highest rankings of the top richest people in the world, I mean, Amazon, the Gates, the Musks, they're all in data and technology. So whether it's in e-commerce, it's in e-health, and I think this is where it's going. And one point before you come in is, apart from the aspect of just physical war, as you may see it happening in Gaza or Ukraine, there's a bigger war on the global front, and it's a technological or digital war. Right now, the US and China are arguing about if TikTok should continue. You have over 180 million TikTok subscribers in America alone, but just because it's Chinese-based, the American Senate thinks it's a spyware on America, and unless America has equity stake in TikTok, they want to ban it. So you see where tech and all this is going. But finally, also in the influencing of how will politics and democracy be affected. And
so family fabric.
It's the data mining that's happening, because if artificial intelligence and data analytics can know so much about you and me, they're able to feed you and me in terms of influencing our mind based on what we want to buy.
Purpose what we should be doing.
Which essentially it does, because you simply click, where can I find the fast food? Where can I find this drink? Essentially, it can tell you, because you love or you do this thing or these are the things you believe in your values, you should be voting on.
Let's get back to the newsroom. Traditional news media and how it separates itself from citizen journalism. We see in America the big debate between Fox News and CNN and who tells it as it really is, what are the facts. You rightly said citizens want the news now, but anybody now can tell the news. So with streaming, how do you package news for TV, especially on the box, with time and beat the streaming where somebody will be there and everybody can join in? How do you survive that?
It's a very tough terrain. It's a very tough terrain, and there's a lot of cannibalism now, because the processes within ethical journalism in certain instances are being broken for you to want to fight and beat what you're talking about, to get the scoop,
the speed,
get the scoop. And it's not only about the speed, but it's also the manner. When social media started, lots of, especially in Africa, and I remember in Zambia, policymakers would say, don't believe that, it's only on social media. But eventually, what is actually happening in traditional newsrooms is that the news ideas in a diary session or the news narrative is being shaped with the fact that when social media coughs or sneezes, we have that knee-jerk reaction. So traditional newsrooms are reacting to, oh, there's a video gone viral.
Social media is influencing
it's setting the agenda. It's influencing. But we ought to be very careful. And this is why I said social media is not journalism, because conventional and traditional journalism must be able to practice truthfulness, factualism, accuracy, responsibility, fairness, objectivity.
But it takes time to achieve those, checking a story.
The trick is, how do you do all that
quickly
to compete with a blog of a person who will just capture an accident and say people have died.
Or release information that has not been checked. They just write a blog and post it.
Irregardless of the consequences. So this is where the major challenge is. But we live in a microwave society now where people want things to cook.
Well, what does that say about families, about societies world over? Because some research shows that, people are meaner on social media because they feel they really can't be seen. They can use fake names. What does that say about families, about society, about communities?
A number of things. First of all, a breakdown of family values. Because there's something I learned more recently. It's a very interesting term. I don't know if you've heard of what is called screenagers. To say you're no longer raising teenagers, screenagers.
Screen toddlers too.
Because they spend most of their time on their screens. And you will see that those who study consumption trends and behavior will show you that the amount of time being spent in front of a TV has reduced to not more than 30 minutes in a day. Whereas opposed to online, depending on data access, it's on average 2 hours a day. And so the breakdown of family values in that you cannot sit around where we started from, that you would watch a nice series or a nice movie with your children.
Conversation because on the dinner table.
Movies were not just about entertainment, but sometimes the emotional side of it, the storytelling and so on, that is all lost. But like you said, also on the side now of the toxicity or the danger of the content that is being consumed on social media, how do you regulate it? From the TV side, you try with parental guidance, you try with age restriction, whether this is 18 and the age warnings and so on. But I think with social media, once somebody goes onto Google, any other search engine, I know there are means and ways that whether it's through Zikta or it's through these pages that parents can sort of link their Google accounts to their children's accounts, but you cannot really
Teenagers
regulate.
Have a free ride.
Complex and sophisticated. So for me, the danger is on basically protection of children. Apart from just scammers, children have been abducted, children have been molested, children have been kidnapped based on people they meet who are not in the real world. And for me, the aspect is that there's just no human-to-human relationship. And why is human-to-human relationship very important for me? It's the empathy to feel for another human being, to feel the pain, to feel sorry. It's no longer there with guys.
To be kind.
That's why when you say there's so many bullies, sometimes on social media that will say things irregardless of the implications and the impact.
Now that we've said all this, how easy is it in this environment for media owners like yourself to run a media house in Zambia profitably?
Not easy. Not easy because, first of all, consumers are shifting. Advertisers are shifting. Policy must adapt. Regulation must adapt, meaning that even the business model must adapt. Simply put, if we do not adapt, we die. It's either you swim or you sink.
Tell us some of your experiences so far since you began.
Well, the experiences have been quite interesting. I mean, coming from a journalist myself into business has been a very, very interesting and learning experience. We started off really just trying to do what we love as a passion. But in the last 7 years, we've grown from a few people around to now 93 employees. Not easy. You have to deal with sometimes the tax person, you have to deal with bailiffs.
Really? Oh my.
I mean, it's all about paying the bills.
In countries like Nigeria, it is this space, creatives and technology that propelled the country really to the number one economy in Africa. Creativity was a big contributor. What are we missing here? What are we missing? Is it tax regulation is too stiff? Is it regulation? Or is it just a lack of appreciation of this hanging fruit where so many young people can get jobs in acting, as reporters, as producers? What is missing in this mix?
We came to the party too late. I think as a country we looked at creatives and we looked at just the aspect of film and content as entertainment and not as a business.
As a business.
And as a money-making venture. So when you look at Hollywood, they started way ahead of us. Bollywood picked up on it. Nollywood picked up on it.
In Hollywood, many movies are paid for by the bank. Are you able to access financing from banks here to make films?
It's not. That's what I'm saying. It's not structured as a viable, project, because like you're saying, shooting a movie project or a series in Hollywood is a huge project worth over hundreds of millions, of dollars. And so it's only now that, policymakers are beginning to craft a film policy and we're trying to throw in tax incentives in terms of waiving tax on equipment, waiving tax on all these things. But I argue from as president of Media Owners that all these things that we're doing will not work as long as they're in isolation, because what we need to build is an industry. All these examples that you're giving have built an industry. It's a value chain. Mm-hmm. It's all about input and then output.
The whole ecosystem.
And business works around an ecosystem. Is there a demand? Mm-hmm. And if there's a demand, we're going to create or grow a product. Mm-hmm. So you can have actors, you can have filmmakers, you can have musicians and artists to satisfy a demand in between. So there is a market, but what happens in between to create an industry? Who regulates pricing? Who regulates the cost of production? Who regulates the input side and so on? There's just a whole confusion in the country right now. In short, the industry does not exist from a business perspective, whether it's cost of doing business, the cost of output in terms of the value of how much we should be buying this at. It's all not there.
And yet we have seen tremendous progress with influencers, creatives, whether it's in America, the Kim Kardashians, that they won't get out of bed for less than this amount, or even here in Zambia with our Mutale Mwanzas. Why are we not able to not maybe copy, but at least adapt to some of those models, because they get so many viewers compared to a traditional media like yourselves?
Like I said, we came late.
And yet advertising follows them.
Yeah, we came late to the party, and unfortunately, sometimes we are people that copy things and replicate before we even understand. And we can copy, study, and even do better. The concept of influencers is fairly new, but it's an old thing. It all started in the sports and entertainment aspects, where you have a big sports shot, whether it was your Michael Jordan, who began branding his own Air Jordan shoes and things like that, whether it would be a Tiger Woods or even just big movie stars, whether they would get a brand endorsement and so on. But I think now it's this whole concept of monetization that has kicked in. So what is the brand value of the individual? And does this brand as a product want to associate? And you've seen that in between the breaking point is the influencer's personal life versus whether it aligns to the brand values of the product endorser. And
is that a new territory for like your media house? We see programs like Chichis. Is that whole part of the adaptation?
Again, it's a whole jungle. It's a whole jungle because I sit here sometimes and it's very difficult to navigate. You have stars on TV that sometimes become bigger than the institution. And I always love to give the example of a football scenario. Who is bigger between the player and the team? It's an egg chicken concept. The fans will tell you, we want to go to the stadium if that player is on the pitch.
So you follow the advertisers, you follow the audience.
Well, sometimes I would want to watch a program if a certain presenter or host is on the program. And with this eruption of pages, you may have a host within the TV organization who also has their own personal page, whether it's an X page or a Facebook page. And this always happens that the personal brand of the presenter
Becomes quite big.
is more influential than that of the TV station. And like you give an example, it's all fluid, even in terms of, and I need to say this, even how we are hiring and recruiting people. You cannot keep in today's media space an employee to run an 8 to 7 job. You've got certain personalities and stars who will hop from one gig,
one station to
to
another,
the next.
one gig to another, and they're multi-skilled. They can do camera presentation. And let me ask this: in all this that we have discussed, it seems to me that research, that data analytics must be quite critical, because the audience can change any time. And how is technology also helping with that? We see big institutions like CNN always doing polls, always talking about data. How much of a challenge is it for a media house in Zambia?
Cost, first of all, because we unfortunately, our education system is not producing enough of skilled labor. I know we do have a lot of we have the Ministry of Technology now and things like that, but creating or designing these apps locally, we don't have such readily available solutions. So we're always adapting to an application or a piece of technology that has probably been designed for Europe, or it's been designed for East Asia, and we need to adapt it here. But yeah, rightfully, like you've put it, when I sit to look at the business, one, for efficiency's sake, for cost-effective sake, there are certain things that we're applying as well. One of the things we've ably done in our studios is, because of the small space where we're in, broadcast now is not about a huge studio. You can easily use a very small space in a green room with robotic cameras and play with it in all sorts of manner with effects on graphics and so on. So it's helping in that aspect. The aspect of automated paywalls and really just
Data analytics.
the data analytics gives you an idea that after a show, you're able to understand how many people watched, how many people did I reach, how many women were there, of what age group are they, which countries were they from. By the time I'm getting into a 4th episode of a series, I'm able to know that so many women aged between 25 and 36 do love this particular program, and it becomes easier to also target and advertise and plug them into such a program. So definitely it is working also well for us to adapt in that particular aspect. But apart from just the cost of the applications, the hardware, so we're buying more, not of cameras actually, but more of software. More of computer hardware, and it's then training. Training is what is important. For us this year and going into the next 3 years will be all about adapting to where all this is going and building a skill set of competence around people who can understand data, interpret it, and action on what that data is telling us. But ultimately, if we have to stay in business, monetize content around these platforms.
Media houses, especially the newsroom, and politics, there's a symbiotic relationship. We hear often, again I say, to institutions like CNN saying, we are calling out the election, because of data analytics. How much of a role do you think that media houses play in the sphere of politics in terms of providing facts, checking facts, analyzing manifestos, trying to avoid fake news, deep fake now? And what do you see this relationship continuing to become going forward?
So I think we need to invest more into probable fact-checking tools. We need to do that in newsrooms. in the developed world, these are being used very efficiently, because once you have a debate of top candidates in a presidential debate, you can have them saying one thing, and on the side of the screen there's fact check whether a person is telling the truth or not. That is one area. But I think from the fundamentals of the fact that as media houses, even in an election, we must be able to report the truth. And there's a lot of anxiety, that happens around an election. Why is an election authority taking so much time to verify? Should we still, in a world of technology, be waiting for a fax from Shangombo, a boat, and things like that? I think we pat ourselves on the back as a media house. We did a tremendous job in 2021, working within the rules of the game, but just applying technology by putting a couple of people in polling stations and following the rules that we can only broadcast and announce something when the form G something is stuck outside a polling station.
Once the presiding officer has
announced, but once they are stuck and so on. And it's only a matter of capturing that and being able to film and connecting all these districts and provinces around, that we're able to do real-time election coverage. And people begin to build, because I think the biggest currency for good journalism is credibility and integrity. And our brand and credence and our stamp of authority was given to us in 2021 because we were able to do a leaderboard and give verified results from these polling stations without any conflict or anything aside what the election authority was doing. I saw an enhanced system in the last election in Kenya. They were coming out of a very bloody post-election period, civil war in 2000, I think, and 9 and so on. But the private media, they're allowed to do parallel voter tabulation, but it's all in the technology that has to be approved, that when an election results is transmitted from point A to B, it should be able to tally. And so, like you rightfully put it, the future where we're going in terms of, for me, the key word is transparency. I think if there was ever a time where underhand methods were used in electoral processes, with the coming of technology, transparency will be the in thing. There will be nowhere to hide because all these things, whether it's through newsrooms or even just the citizens, they'll be more vigilant to ensure that the vote is protected.
And that's good for democracy.
It's good for democracy.
The world.
It's good for the world.
Okay. Now, you're president of Media Owners of Zambia. Really, what are your immediate what is your immediate agenda? I mean, I'm sure you're in all business to make money, but what is your immediate agenda? What would you like to see changed? What do you want to see achieved in the immediate future?
I think for the last 30 years, our media in Zambia has concentrated so much on cementing the fundamentals around the protection of the rights and freedoms of a journalist, which is very important. I'm a journalist myself. We have spent so much time on fighting for the promotion of enactment of things like the Freedom of Information Act and all these things. Granted, we need them. But I'm coming from a standpoint that you cannot have a truly independent and a truly free media if they are financially unhealthy.
They'll tend to be compromised. There'll be no integrity in the
There'll be no
newsroom.
integrity, but also there'll just be no jobs if the media houses cannot function viably. And so we need to balance the aspect of the financial health and viability of media as an industry and businesses, because I think that the two go together. That the more financially healthier and independent media houses are, the better they can do a job without being compromised.
Is there advertising monopolies or monopolistic tendencies that we have just got so few and you're all chasing after those few?
Unfortunately so, in a number of ways. First of all, the number of media outlets on the market are so many in relation to the market, the advertising market size. And we as a country, through the Institute of Marketing and other people, need to really do a survey in terms of you have over 100 plus radio stations, over 60 plus TV stations, now an upswing of online platforms, chasing very few advertisers. Is there capacity for these to viably make money in terms of the cost of doing business, especially for TV?
In a capitalist world, they say those who are inefficient will fall off.
That's number one. Number two, it's also the size of the population. I think these things work better. You're talking about Nigeria. I mean, they're talking about over
200
million people with very few media houses. So the economies of scale, they do work out. But 20 million people, 100 plus stations, and it just doesn't really work out that well. So we need to start from there. But my biggest worry is also on the fact that for Zambia, the monopoly is also from the outside entities. You will be interested to know that all big advertising players of all the big brands, whether it's banks, it's beverages and so on, have these big media agencies that are either based in Joburg, they're based in Nairobi, and so you're not dealing directly with the actual
and
advertiser.
They're determining the placement.
They're determining the placements, they're determining the pricing. And so sometimes they have these curtailing tendencies and the monopolistic tendencies.
Again, wouldn't you say it's our fault? We've created that vacuum where Zambian marketing and media advertising agencies, is that not an opportunity for business?
Yes, but like I said, for a long time.
Or is it because the private sector is largely foreign, so they are dealing with advertisers from their own countries, like South Africa, for example?
But I think the way you asked me as a media owners president, it's high time that we took our space. What is happening in Zambia cannot happen in South Africa or in Nairobi or in Nigeria, for example. It doesn't happen. It's just that we've taken so much time concentrating more on the newsroom than the media as a
the
whole
ecosystem.
as a business.
Yeah.
And simple policies can help us work this out. That really, don't we have Zambian ad agencies? Don't we have competent Zambians who can negotiate deals with big brands? Do we need somebody from Nairobi to come and tell me what is the most popular program on my station and what price I should be able to sell?
Well, now that we're even talking about AI, aren't you even more under threat? What is AI? What is AR? What is the future? What is the threat for you? Maybe that's where we should be ending. What is AI?
I think for your listeners and viewers, a simple thing is artificial intelligence is basically technology being used to, others will simply say, being able to do what a machine or technology being able to do what a human being can do more effectively through the study of patterns and trends. So it's how human beings do things, act and behave, and it's sort of automated and captured, made into a robot, made into an application. So simple things like, you've heard of the famous Alexa or Siri now, where in a household, you can connect this technological appliance to literally everything electrical. You can tell Alexa or Siri to switch off the lights, you can simply say, Siri, can you call Mulenga? As long as Siri is connected to my phone book, you simply do not do that. So you're removing the human interface.
Should many young people in the media be afraid that they will lose their jobs unless they...
Not only in the media, in many industries. I mean, I've seen robots being put in places, in factories, in restaurants. But like you're saying, in the media, the biggest threat is you will use certain applications for investigative journalism because it can sift through. So where you needed 5 journalists to work on an exclusive investigative piece for so many months, you can use an application in 1 week and come up with the same. I've seen in Asia that Russia, for example, there's robotic news anchors.
It's changing every day.
It's changing every day. The use of drones, the use of chatbot to do scripts. I think it's not so long ago, late last year, a strike in Hollywood, the Scripters Guild, in terms of, people will write scripts for movies now. It's through an applications. So jobs
Under threat.
are under threat.
Everywhere.
I was looking at disadvantages of AI. Jobs is on top of the agenda, but the other thing you spoke about is the issue of the empathy, the data protection, and probably the limitations to responsibility. All those are disadvantages that come through with AI.
Well, I think we can talk about this subject forever, but it's been quite an eye-opener for myself, and I'm sure for many of our listeners. We can only wish your association, and in particular your own Diamond Media, all the best, and we hope that this industry, in spite of AI, will continue to provide opportunities for our young people, but also as newsrooms to strengthen our democracy and, of course, family values. Thank you for joining me on my podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Well, that was our conversation for today. It is a current conversation, and I think it calls on each one of us to take stock. If we are going to be able to engage with the world as it changes, as it is impacted by technology, we have to be multi-skills. We have to learn and relearn new skills as an individual, as communities, even as governments, because technology is disrupting the way we've done things in the past, and it's creating new opportunities and new threats. I hope that you did enjoy the program, and I look forward to seeing you again on my next conversation next Sunday. Good evening.